Namaskar, all of you, for this new session. We have yet to open out the topic of pranayam further. Uh, Last time we were discussing about the confusion that lies between Vayu and Prana. The five Vayus and the five Pranas have the same name, and therefore, for those who are not familiar with the esoteric aspects of pranayam, they have a confusion. Panchavayu, prana, apan, saman, vyan, udan, vyan. Pancha pranas again, prana, apan, saman, vyan, udan, vyan. So, because of these nomenclatures, there is a confusion, and most of us consider our breathing as pran, or pran as breathing. But that is layman's kind of naive understanding. So last time I was telling you that the Vayus must be always referred with Vayu attached to the name. Prana Vayu, Apana Vayu, Samana Vayu, Vyana Vayu, Udana Vayu, Vyana Vayu. Vayu should not be just denoted by pran, apan, saman, vyan, udan, vyan. That is only possible for pranas. And when it is pran, apan, saman, vyan, udan in classical yoga, reference is to prana, not to vayus. When it is reference to vayu, then the vayu is attached. The suffix of vayu must be attached in formal process of yoga. Then I also made a point that between vayu and prana there is a big difference, generation wise. There's almost a difference of about 8 generations. Difference of 8 generations between prana and vayu. The 8th generation is a big difference, enormous difference, substantial difference, characteristic difference, and therefore there is no room for confusion between the prana, which are 5, and vayu, which are again 5, and again with the same nomenclature. However, the surname Vayu must be attached to Vayus, as I said just now. Then, as I said, that there is a distance of 8 generations between Prana and Vayu. How is that distance of 8 generations? In Sankhya, the Moola Prakriti is the first principle, primordial principle. And from pradhana, from avyakta, from nominal primordial matter comes the first mutation called mahat, which is rendered as intelligence principle in English. And prana is an offshoot of mahat tattva. So from Moola Prakriti, not only the Mahat comes, but also Prana comes. So they are contemporaries. Mahat, Buddhi Tattva, and Prana are contemporaries according to Vedantic process. Vedanta has divulged this. So from Mahat, the next generation is Ahankar. So that is the first generation from Mahat. Second generation is Shabda Tanmatra. Third generation is Sparsha Tanmatra. Then comes Rupa Tanmatra. Then comes Rasa Tanmatra. Then comes Gandha Tanmatra. Then comes Akasha Tattva. And then comes Vayu Tattva. So you can see that there is a difference of and distance of 8 generations. If Prana is contemporary of Mahat, then there is a distance of 8 generations. The prana doesn't have any generation. Prana has no progeny. But Mahat has a progeny. Mahat, Ahankar, शब्द तन्मात्र, स्पर्श तन्मात्र, रूप तन्मात्र, रस तन्मात्र, गंध तन्मात्र, आकाश तत्व, and then Vayu Tattva. And Panchavayus come in the generation of Vayu Tattva. Because all these Panchavayus are Vayus. So, that is why I said there is a big difference between Prana Tattva and Vayu Tattva with reference to Panchapranas and Panchavayus. So if you count it is distance of 8 generation. If Mahat and Prana come at number 2 position, the Vayu Tattva comes in 9th position. And therefore Panchavayu comes there. And therefore there should be no mix-up between Prana and Vayu, which is the case for neophytes or those who are not really well initiated. Then one more thing that which I made clear last time, that there are only 4 kriyas of Pancha Pranas and 4 kriyas of Panchavayus. Pancha Pranas don't have 5 kriyas. Panchavayus don't have 5 kriyas. But they have 4 kriyas because Vyana is a common factor. So precisely, and if it is to put in technical terms, the Prana Kriya is Prana Vyana Kriya. Apana Kriya is Apana Vyana Kriya. Samana Kriya is Samana Vyana Kriya. And Udana Kriya is Udana Vyana Kriya. So these are 4 kriyas for 5 pranas. Similarly, in case of Vayu, it is not just Prana Vayu Kriya, it is Prana Vyana Vayu Kriya. It is not just Apana Vayu Kriya, it is Apana Vyana Vayu Kriya. And then similarly, Samana Vyana Vayu Kriya and Udana Vyana Vayu Kriya. So there are 4 kriyas with respect to Pancha Pranas and Pancha Vayus. So, that is enough for the time being to decipher the difference between Prana Tattva and the Vayu Tattva, or Pancha Pranas and Pancha Vayus. So, how does breathing becomes pranic breathing? If you recall, I said when the matrukas are used, then it becomes prana kriya. So the breath is not going to change. Breath of Vayu kriya and breath of prana kriya is not going to change. With respect to physical dimensions of volume, velocity, density, confinement, or graphic modes, or design modes, it is one and the same instrument with which it will be done. But in Prana Kriya, there are Swara Varanas used for Amantrak Pranayam and Nama Mantra used for Samantrak Pranayam. So then it becomes Pranayam. Without that, it would be Shwasayam. Now, in Patanjali's scheme, it is not just taking the breath and inhaling and exhaling or retaining. It doesn't make it pranayam, or it doesn't make it even shwasayam. Just inhaling is not shwasayam. Just exhaling is not shwasayam. Just exhaling slow, deep, complete, etc., or exhaling similarly, or soft inhalation and soft exhalation is not going to become shwasayam. Or even retention coming after exhalation, after inhalation is not going to make it shwasayam. How it will become ayama? So Patanjali has given the scheme. The scheme is by Stambhakala Desha. or his sutra is Bahya Abhyantara Stambha Vritti Deshakala Sankhya Bhi Paridrushtaha. This Paridrushta aspect makes it Ayama. Now Paridrushta by what? Desha and Kala and Sankhya. So these are the three factors. So the regulation takes place with the help and with assistance of, or with the framework of, Desha Paridrushtata, Kala Paridrushtata, Sankhya Paridrushtata. So whether it is Shvasaya or Pranayam, just one deep breath, conditioned breath, or slow and deep breath or complete breath is not going to make it Shvasayam. It must be Desha Paridrushta, that is confined to a region or within a frame of a region, or within a frame of a velocity pattern, or within a frame of number of cycles. So this is how Ayama takes place. Desha Kala Sankhya. So Desha means what? Desha means regions in the body, such as nasal region, oral region, or throat region, or chest region, or diaphragm region, or abdominal region, or navel region, or pelvic region. So these are the schemes. There must be schematization based on Desha Paridrushtata. Desha means region wise. Because if you are if the breath is of a pelvic abdominal confinement, it will be one kind of breath. If it is of chest confinement, it will be another kind of breath. The pelvic abdominal confinement of breath has one function, and chest confinement breath has another function. Head brain confinement has yet another function. The back confinement has yet another function. Diaphragm confinement has yet another function. So by Desha, the breath changes. Function of the breath changes. Process of the breath changes. That's how it is regulated. I will give you a simple example. If you are doing the breath of, say, pelvic abdominal inhalation, you are not supposed to inflate the pelvic abdominal region. You are not supposed to bloat, dilate, puff, open, inflate pelvic abdominal region. But same breath, when it is done in chest confinement, it's a different terrain. And then you will go for expansion, dilatation, inflation. The chest has to be opened while you are inhaling. Your pelvic region should not be opened, abdominal region should not be opened while you are inhaling. The brain should not be inflated while you are inhaling in the brain confinement. So when the breath is driven in different terrains or locations or confinements, they are different drives. You are not supposed to inflate the brain by inhaling more. You are supposed to inflate the chest while you are inhaling more. You are not supposed to inflate your belly while you are working with abdominal confinement. If you are inhaling in the pelvic perineum region, you are not supposed to inflate that part. As a matter of fact, in the hip and perineum region, there will be contraction as you inhale. There will be suction, contraction when you inhale, particularly in a sitting position. Try this out. But if you are inhaling in the chest region, the chest will expand, chest will dilate, chest will inflate, chest will puff, and it should be done that way. But that will not be done in back. You don't inflate your back if it is a back confinement inhalation. You don't inflate the brain when it is a brain confinement inhalation. So this is the very important field work that one has to carry out to really embark upon pranayama. So try to understand how you inhale differently and should inhale differently between anal mouth perineum confinement, hip confinement, to pelvic navel confinement, to abdominal confinement, to diaphragmatic confinement, to chest and breast confinement, then to back confinement, to head and brain confinement, to face confinement. So these are different terrains in which the breath is moved, and therefore there are different conditionings. Conditioning while you are inhaling the pelvic confinement is contraction. And the conditioning in the chest confinement when you are inhaling, it is inflation, dilatation. In the brain confinement, it is again not inflation, nor even deflation, nor even suction. In pelvic region, there will be suction contraction. In the brain region, there is no suction contraction. There should not be suction contraction. In the chest region, there is inflation of the abdomen, of the chest, but not in the brain region. So this is how the aspect of ayama has to be understood by selecting different confinements. So the function of the breath will change, manifestation of breath will change, inhalation, exhalation and two retentions, their function, role, manifestations will change when you go by Desha Paridrushtata, which is the scheme given by Patanjali. It is so important scheme. So this needs to be experimented upon. So try on your own the different confinements of your inhalations and see how the actions, reactions, responses, manifestations are different. So also in case of exhalations. If it is pelvic confinement of exhalation, you can go for deflation of the pelvis. But if it is a chest confinement exhalation, you should not go for deflation. If it is brain confinement exhalation, you should not go for deflation. So in the back, it is one kind of dynamics for in exhalations. In abdominal pelvic region, another kind of dynamics. Diaphragm, chest, breast, another kind of dynamics. And head, brain, face, skull, another kind of dynamics. So you will know how the ayama aspect comes by Desha Paridrushtata. The second one is Kala Paridrushtata. Kala means the time duration. The time duration of your in-breath, out-breath depends upon two factors. One is volume. It may take longer time if the volume is more. If you are going to inhale greater volume, time might be taken more. If you are going to exhale greater volume, the time might be taken more. The other factor is velocity. If you slow down your inhalation, the time might be taken more. If you drop the velocity of your inhalation, it will take longer time. If you drop the velocity of exhalation, it will take longer time. So the Kala Paridrushtata has these two dimensions. One is volume dimension, the other one is velocity dimension, and then of course therefore combination of the two. So in pranayam, if you are supposed to make your breath thinner and rarefied and finer and super fine, it will take longer time. If you make your exhalation sharper, thicker, it will take shorter time. Similar is the case of inhalation. If you make your inhalation rarefied, thin, waft, delicate, tender, it is going to take longer duration. Or if you increase the volume of your inhalation, it is going to take longer duration as well. And again, the combination of the two, velocity and the volume of inhalation, will again work on the time factor, duration factor, kala. So the breath will be conditioned by time in two ways. One is velocity, the other one is volume, and therefore the combination of the two as well. So some experimentation, some observation, some field work has to be carried out with respect to the Kala Paridrushtata, which depends upon qualitative improvement of the breath in terms of rarity of the breath, super fineness of the breath, tenderness of the breath, waft condition of the breath, delicate breath. It's going to take longer time. And the volume, of course, on the other hand. So some study, observation needs to be carried out with regards to Kala Paridrushtata, which depends upon two factors, which I just now divulged. The other one is Sankhya Paridrushtata. You see, pranayam is not done by one cycle. One cycle of conditioned breath doesn't make it pranayam or even shvasayam. We follow. Just one cycle of breath or just one inhalation will not make it shvasayam and pranayam. Even if there is desha paridrushtata and kala paridrushtata. There must be number of cycles replicated, number of cycles homogeneous, number of cycles identical. So this is the third aspect of ayama or regulation, where there are multiple cycles, more than one cycle definitely. Two cycles identical in identical scheme, in identical process, then it will become shvasayam or pranayam. 3 cycles, 4 cycles, 5 cycles, that way will make it pranayam. So understand this factor, that just one cycle conditioned, regulated doesn't make it pranayam or shvasayam. There must be more than one cycle. Multiples of cycles, 2 and more. Then only it will become ayama, or in case of shvasayam, in case of pranayam as well. Therefore, Patanjali introduces us to this scheme of Desha Kala Sankhya. So we must carry out exercises to develop some familiarity with the Desha Paridrushtata, Kala Paridrushtata, Sankhya Paridrushtata. So we'll have to go through certain exercises where one dimension of regulation is applied. There are 3 dimensions to be applied, but first you have to try one dimension, just the Desha, then just the Kala, and then just the Sankhya. Then comes the second stage, where you'll have to work with Desha plus Kala, Desha Kala both handled, or Desha Sankhya both handled, or Sankhya and Kala both handled. So this is 2-dimensional approach, where you have to work simultaneously with the 2 factors considered for regulation. So there is 1-dimensional regulation where there is either Desha or Kala or Sankhya. In the second stage, when you are sufficiently proficient with it and you have understood some control is available with you, then go for 2-dimensional regulation. That is Desha Kala regulation, Desha Sankhya regulation, Kala Sankhya regulation. Okay. And when that too has come in some governance, then you have to go for Desha Kala Sankhya 3. So there are 3-dimensional exercises to learn the regulation, uniregulation, and then the bi-regulation and tri-regulation. Uni, bi, tri. 1, 2, 3. 1, just Desha, just Kala, just Sankhya. 2, Desha and Kala simultaneously, Desha and Sankhya simultaneously, Kala and Sankhya simultaneously. And when some proficiency is attained, then we have to go to 3-dimensional, which is Desha, Kala, Sankhya. So these are 3 sets of exercises to be attempted for Shvasayam and Pranayam both. Then Patanjali also mentions the other aspect. Desha Kala Sankhya bhi paridrushtaha dirgha sukshmaha. What is the meaning of dirghatva here? And what is the meaning of sukshmatva here? Dirghatva means it's not the dirghatva of the inhalation or exhalation or retention. When it refers to dirghatva, it is not duration of inhalation or duration of exhalation or duration of retention. Then what is it? It is long duration of pranayam. That means pranayam, like we might be familiar with doing some pranayam for 5 minutes or 7 minutes or 10 minutes. So we know there is a progression. We want to have this progression. If we are done pranayam for 5-7 minutes, we want to try 7-10 minutes. And when the 7-10 minutes are attained, then we want to go for 10-12 minutes and then 12-15 minutes, so on and so forth. So the longer duration of pranayam, the replicated aspect of Desha Kala Sankhya, replicated Desha Kala Sankhya over a longer period of time is another exercise that we have to attempt. Just learning to do Ujjayi Pranayam or Viloma Pranayam is not just the lesson there. The Ujjayi, where you have applied the conditions, try to do for a longer duration of time. More number of cycles. Replicated kind of Shwasayam Pranayam with more number of cycles. This will show your progression. If that regresses, that means you are devolved. Now this Dirghatva, as is explained in the pedantics, Dirghatva pranayam means what? We can only imagine pranayam of 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 45 minutes, 1 hour. Oh, that must be a master if somebody does pranayam for 1 hour. No, that is not the fact here. The commentators and the yogis have made it clear. Dirghata means what? The pranayam over a long time. In terms of days, weeks, months, years, decades, centuries. Like yogis on Himalayas are seen to be, almost like stone-iced. Yogis have frozen into a state of yoga and they have been there for decades and centuries. That's the meaning of Dirghata when it comes to yogi. When it comes to you and me, Dirghata means what? Well, I was doing for 10 minutes, now I started doing half an hour. So I am now doing pranayam for a longer time. I was doing for half an hour, now I can do it for 45 minutes. I was doing for 45 minutes, now I can do for an hour. Then I can do for more than an hour. That's all is the Dirghata that we can imagine for ourselves. And it will be like that for us. But ultimately for yogis, the Dirghata of pranayam extends to multiple days and weeks and months and years and decades and centuries and millennia. That's the meaning of Dirghata. Now what is Sukshmata for us? Very fine breathing, silky breathing, thin breathing, tender breathing, fine and super fine breathing. This is what we will imagine by Sukshmata. But the pedantic meaning of Sukshmata is not that. The breathing of yogi will be so subtle, will be so very subtle that the yogi's electrical heartbeats also will not be beating. And this we have heard in case of some yogis who stopped electrical beats of the hearts and then the medicos declared them as dead, but they came to life. They got up from there because they could not feel the pulsation artery pulsation, heartbeat. So all these things are beating for us, we know that. The biological beats are going on. But the breath then becomes so subtle for a yogi that all these things are not there. It is a very deep hibernation of physiology, deep hibernation of cellular physiology, deep hibernation of uh, psychology and mindology of a yogi. Then nothing vibrates. Nothing vibrates even for a machine. So subtle is breathing. That is the meaning of subtle. For us, what is subtle breath? Very fine breath, very thin breath, very linear and thin and fine and subtle and tender and soft and waft and delicate breath. That is the meaning of subtle for us. But in case of a yogi, that is the meaning of sukshmata. But then in our hierarchy, what we should do is try to work on increasing the duration of pranayama. If you are able to regulate the shwasa or prana, it must be progressive. So we'll have to exercise towards that also. As to how the duration of pranayama will increase, how the duration of shwasayam will increase, how the duration of retention will increase, how the retention of kumbhaka will increase. And the sukshmata for us is what? More and more rarefied breath. As far as possible rarefied, as far as possible fine and super fine and microscopically fine. So that is what we have to attempt in this kind of conditioning, which is dirghata and sukshmata. So there are five kinds of conditionings which are suggested by Patanjali. Desha paridrushtata, kala paridrushtata, sankhya paridrushtata, and then dirghata and sukshmata. So these are the five factors where we have to exercise and understand these concepts and develop the necessary capacities. And of course then comes the kumbhaka also. The kumbhaka also has desha kala sankhya paridrushtata. There is kumbhaka again desha related. Pelvic confinement kumbhak, abdomen confined kumbhak, diaphragm confined kumbhak, chest confined kumbhak, back confined kumbhak, spine confined kumbhak. So there are retentions. Stambha pranayam and kumbhaka pranayam. We will be only doing stambha pranayam, not really kumbhaka pranayam. I will explain you shortly about this. So there is desha paridrushtata of bahya vritti, and abhyantar vritti and stambha vritti. There is sankhya paridrushtata of bahya vritti, abhyantar vritti and stambha vritti. And then there is sankhya paridrushtata of bahya vritti, abhyantar vritti and stambha vritti. We all will inhale and retain, we will all exhale and will retain. That is very much in our scope. We can inhale and retain the breath. We can exhale and retain the breath. Retention is not kumbhaka, as much as puraka is not inhalation and rechaka is not exhalation. That's why Patanjali has used the words here, bahya vritti, abhyantar vritti, stambha vritti. In case of you and me, who are not proficient yogis, will be doing inhalation and exhalation and inhalative retention and post-exhalative retention. So, bahya vritti is done, abhyantar vritti is done, stambha vritti is done. But in case of a yogi, there is a condition that it happens. Like we saw during asanas, that asanas happen for a proficient yogi. Unproficient people do it, they have to do it and accomplish it. Whereas for a yogi, that will happen. So, in a case of a yogi, all these things start happening. And when they start happening, then it becomes puraka, rechaka, and kumbhaka. So, inhalation of a proficient yogi is to be called Puraka. Inhalation of you and me should not be called as Puraka. That is not precise. That is not having classical bearing. We might retain the breath, it doesn't become Kumbhaka. We might have internal retention and external retention, it doesn't become Abhyantara Kumbhaka and Bahya Kumbhaka. It is only in case of a yogi that his breath becomes Puraka in pranayama. His exhalation, out breath, becomes Rechaka in pranayama because of the qualifications. There is a big difference between our qualification of inhalation and exhalation and yogi's qualification of inhalation and exhalation, or qualification of our in-breath and out-breath and qualification of in-breath and out-breath of a yogi. The qualifications differ and significantly differ. And at that qualification, they are to be called Puraka, Rechaka. And therefore, the Kumbhaka will come if there is a Puraka. The Kumbhaka will come if there is a Rechaka. Kumbhaka will not come if there is a Abhyantara Vritti Shwasa of ours or Bahya Vritti Prashwasa of ours. Kumbhaka will not come there. So when there is the technical process is completely adhered to without a compromise, while inhalation is happening, while the exhalation is happening, then it is called Puraka, Rechaka respectively. And therefore, Kumbhaka happening in such process, retention happening in such a process gets called Kumbhaka. So Puraka, Kumbhaka, Rechaka is only yogi's pranayam, not your pranayam and not my pranayam. We will be doing Shwasa, Prachwasa. Shwasa pranayam, Uchwasa pranayam. Shwasa pranayam, Prashwasa pranayam. And therefore, it will be only Stambha, Stambhanam, and not a Kumbhaka. We can retain the breath, however, it won't become Kumbhaka. So, when all governing factors are adhered to and accomplished while you are inhaling, then it becomes Puraka. While the same happening in exhalation, it will be Rechaka. And therefore, when it happens after such Puraka, it will be Kumbhaka. After such Rechaka, it will be Kumbhaka. We have to give up this. We are fashionable to call inhalation as Puraka, exhalation as Rechaka, and then retention as Kumbhaka. This has no validity in the pedantics of yoga and pedagogy of yoga. A yogi's breath becomes Puraka, Rechaka, Kumbhaka. Our breath doesn't become Puraka, Rechaka, Kumbhaka because lots of shortcomings, lots of shortfalls, lots of compromises, lots of pilferage in our process of inhaling, exhaling. Therefore, those terms cannot be used in our pranayama. Then, more fascinating aspect is, nasal pranayam these days. Because pranayam means people embark upon nasal pranayam. And then they know the Ida, Pingala, Sushumna, Chandra Nadi, Surya Nadi, and Shunya Nadi. The right nostril is Surya Nadi. The left nostril is Chandra Nadi. Therefore, people think that if they inhale by the right nostril, it becomes Surya Nadi pranayam. If they exhale by right nostril, it becomes Surya Nadi pranayam. If they do on the left nostril, in breath or out breath, it becomes Chandra Nadi pranayam. Now that is being very naive. It's not just nostril. There are nadis in the nostrils. And when the breath is through those nadis, not through the nostril. The right nostril has Surya Nadi, whole of the right nostril is not Surya Nadi. Left nostril has Chandra Nadi, the whole left nostril is not Chandra Nadi. The Nadi doesn't have the dimension of our nostrils. Nadi, you know the dimension of the nostril, the gates, the opening of the nostrils. That's the whole of the nostril. The whole of it is not Nadi. There is a Nadi in that nostril. So when it happens through the Nadis, then they should be called Surya Nadi. Just inhaling on the right or doing Shwasayam on the right, it doesn't become Surya Nadi Pranayam or even Shwasayam. By just doing on the left nostril, it doesn't become Chandra Nadi Shwasayam or Pranayam, because it has to flow through that particular Nadi. So sometimes we have to understand how marvelous is the organ of nose. Statistically, let me tell you that there are not only 350 nadis in right nostril and 350 nadis in left nostril for pranayam, but countless. 350 number I gave you because of the number of vowels and consonants. Akaradik, Shakarartha. When you vowelize them, you get those 350 odd number. But they don't have only 350 nadis for each sound form, but countless. Why? Listen to this. In the right nostril, which is Surya, where you have the Surya Nadi, there are 350 prana nadis. Then in the right nostril you have Prithvi, up, Tej, Vayu, Akash. So Pancha Tattva Kriya and Pancha Prana Kriya of the right nostril is again a huge set. Then Shat Chakras. The right nostril has Shat Chakra scheme, left nostril too has Shat Chakra scheme. So right and left nostril have these schemes. Prana Nadis 350. And then Pancha Tattvas, those 9 plus 9, 18 plus 1, 19. How 9 plus 9? Say Prithvi. L, La, Li, Lu, Le, Lai, Lo, Lau, La. 9. Lam, Lam, Lim, Loom, Lame, Lame, Lom, Laum, Laham. Another 9. And then Lam as a Bija mantra. So many nadis of Prithvi, those many nadis of Up, again those many nadis of Teja, and those many nadis of Vayu, and those many nadis of Akasha Tattva. Because there are 5 principles: Prithvi, Up, Tej, Vayu, Akash. So 9 plus 9 plus 9, 1 into 5. So many nadis are there. Then comes Shat Chakras. You know there are Shat Chakras. Shat Chakras have their formulae. Vam, Sham, Sham, Sam, Mooladhara formula. Then you have the Prana Kriya there. Va, Va, Vi, Va, Sha, Sha, Sa, Va, Sha, Sha, Sa, Vi, She, Si, etc. etc. Then Swadhisthana has 6 letters. Bam, Bam, Mam, Yam, Ram, Lam. So again, you will be able to use the Prana Kriyas, Tattva Kriyas. So that's the formula of that Swadhisthana Chakra. Manipura Chakra has 10. Anahata has 12. Vishuddhi has 16. Agnya has 2. So all those have gates in the nostrils. So there will be Mooladhara Surya, Mooladhara Chandra, Swadhisthana Surya and Chandra, Manipuraka Surya and Chandra, because each nostril has the controls of 6 chakras, panchatattvas. Therefore, there are n number of nadis in each of the nostrils. Uh, just what I want to say here with regards to nasal pranayam, that it really doesn't come in the syllabus of you and me, although it is taught in what you call today's quackery. Because otherwise, if you are not taught pranayam with the fingers on the nose, then you will think you are not taught pranayam at all. So that is why the nasal or the hand nostril combination and pranayam has come in modern world very, 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 very prematurely. We don't really qualify. There is a long way to experiment, observe, explore without using the hands on the nostrils. But there is a fascination how to use the hands on the nostrils. So I will tell you that, and with that we will end the session today. Bear this in mind, that only right hand should be used on the nostrils, not the left. This is a basic first rule. Only in case of contingency you might use the left. Otherwise, it should be always done with the right hand. Never also by left hand. Only contingencies is exception. So do not try to go for variety. Let me do the right hand digital pranayam, then later let me try left hand digital pranayam. Surya Bedan of the right hand, Surya Bedan of the left hand, or Anulom Pratilom of the right hand, and then same with the left hand. No, right hand only should be used except for exceptional conditions, such as one not having the right hand at all. Then what? Or some problem with the right hand. Right hand cannot be lifted and used. Then the left hand may be used. Otherwise, it should not be used as a variety. Then, how to place the fingers? Look into light on pranayam. In classical approach, the thumb along with ring finger, small finger is only used. Never use the index finger and middle finger to block the nostrils. They should be not used at all. Whereas in fashionable pranayam, we see that there are so many schools who are doing pranayam by using the 2 fingers or the 4 fingers on the left nostril and thumb on the right nostril. No, those should be folded in. There is a mudra for pranayam. Look into any classical book of pranayam or light on pranayam where Guruji has showed how to use that palm with folded index finger, middle finger in, with a thumb and ring finger and small finger used in bent condition, not straight conditions. So thumb should not be straight on the right nostril, and the ring finger, small finger should not be straight on the left nostril. They must be curved. They must be bent. They must be rounded. And where the finger should come, the thumb and finger should come right below the nasal bone. So take your hand on the nose and feel the nasal bone. Where is the nasal bone? And right below the nasal bone, the placement is there. And there is a lot of skill aspect there. So that is about the nasal pranayam. But there is a long way to go for nasal pranayam. And that's why it is very prematurely attempted in modern world. So if you are a classical student or having a classical approach, postpone it until you have discovered nasal potentials and unless you have gone through these ayamas which just now I mentioned. The next session will be commencing with a fascinating aspect of the enormous Shwasayam pranayam kriyas even for us. They are nearly 70. So we will start next session with that and little bit more about the fingers on the nostrils. where we are ending today. So, namaskar, all of you.